A cookie in yellow gloves. No one dared to speak to the millionaire. His presence alone was enough to silence anyone. But among so many quiet adults, a little girl approached with a cookie in her hands. "Do you want one?" she said sweetly. She was the cleaner's daughter, and when everyone saw the scene, they were left in shock. Liam Evans was looking at the small yellow spot on the Persian rug in his penthouse apartment. Those yellow rubber gloves, several times larger than the hands of the little girl who wore them, created an almost absurd contrast with the sober and impeccable decoration that surrounded him. His gaze wavered between the intrusive object and the horizon of Sao Paulo, which stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. 47 floors above the urban chaos, where the noise did not reach, where people were just dots moving like ants. That's how he preferred it. Distant. "Mr. Evans," the nervous voice of Heidi, his housekeeper, interrupted his thoughts. "The new cleaner started today, as you authorized. She brought her little girl. I think you should know." Liam remained still, his broad shoulders outlined against the afternoon light that flooded the apartment. His fingers tapped lightly on the tempered glass of the coffee table. He didn't answer. He just nodded, almost imperceptibly. Heidi knew that gesture well. It was her cue to leave. In the corridor leading to the service areas, Carla Moreno carefully wiped the marble floor. Drops of sweat trickled down her forehead, despite the air conditioning. It wasn't the physical effort that made her perspire. It was the nervousness, the constant fear that her 4-year-old daughter, Mia, might make some noise or touch something she shouldn't. "Mom, can I help?" Mia whispered, her bright eyes watching her mother's every move. "Stay still in the hallway, my love," Carla replied in a low voice. "Remember what we talked about? This place belongs to the important man, and we need to respect it." Mia pouted in disappointment but nodded. Her eyes, however, continued to take in every detail of the environment, marveling at a world so different from the small one-bedroom apartment where they lived in the outskirts of Taboão da Serra. Carla had gotten that job through a friend who worked for a family in the same luxury condominium in Morumbi. When she heard that the famous businessman, Liam Evans, needed a cleaner, she didn't think twice. The salary was much better than anything she could get without a college degree. The problem was Mia. Since the neighborhood community daycare closed due to lack of funds, Carla had been having difficulty finding someone to leave her daughter with during work hours. Nannies cost almost half of what she earned, and she had no relatives in the big city. It was with her heart in her hands that, during the interview with the housekeeper Heidi, she asked if she could bring her daughter. "Mr. Evans doesn't like interruptions," Heidi had replied curtly. "But he is almost never home during the day. If the girl stays quiet and doesn't touch anything, I'll ask him." To her surprise, a positive response came, or something that Heidi interpreted as positive, since the boss only made a gesture with his head without saying a word. Now, on the second day of work, Carla felt like she was walking on eggshells. At home, Mia was an active, talkative, and energetic child. Keeping her quiet for hours was like trying to hold water in her fingers. "If you behave well today, we'll go to Mr. Antonio's bakery on the way home and buy a sweet bun with dulce de leche," Carla promised, knowing she was bargaining with her daughter. A necessary evil. Mia smiled, revealing the gap between her front teeth. Her round cheeks lifted with a smile, forming small dimples. "Can I use my gloves?" Mia asked, pointing to the yellow rubber gloves that Carla had bought at the Taboão market. The girl loved to imitate her mother cleaning the house. "Okay, but stay close to me, all right?" Mia put on the gloves, which were huge on her hands, and started wiping an imaginary glass with her fingertip, concentrated on her imaginary task. On the other side of the apartment, Liam was reviewing documents at his desk. He wasn't in the habit of working from home, preferring the controlled and impersonal environment of his office on Faria Lima Avenue. But today, he needed to sign some urgent documents that his assistant had left. The silence was almost absolute, except for the occasional sound of objects being wiped and scrubbed. Liam liked it that way. Silence meant order, and order meant control. And control was all that mattered. At 38, Liam Evans had built an empire in the technology sector. His company developed business management software that was used by large corporations throughout Latin America. He had started from scratch in a small rented apartment in Pinheiros, and today commanded more than 300 employees. People called him the Iceberg for his calculated coldness, and for the impression that what was seen was only a small part of what was underneath. A title that didn't bother him. On the contrary, nobody dared to speak to Liam beyond what was strictly necessary. His penetrating gaze seemed to freeze anyone who tried a more personal approach. Even his directors and managers measured every word in his presence. Meetings with Liam were known for being precise, direct, and frequently intimidating. What no one knew, or at least no one commented on, was that Liam had not always been like that. There was a time before all this when he smiled easily, when he believed in things other than spreadsheets and contracts. But that was a long time ago. Buried along with other memories he preferred not to revisit. The morning passed with the tranquility that Liam demanded. He occasionally heard the whispered instructions from Carla to her daughter. "Sit here," or "Don't touch that, my love." The cleaner was efficient, he noted, discreetly fast, meticulous. Even with the girl nearby, she managed to keep everything in order. Around noon, Liam decided to have a coffee in the kitchen before returning to the documents. That's when it happened. Turning the corner, he almost tripped over something small. Mia was there, standing, looking up with her enormous brown eyes, her hands covered by the yellow rubber gloves, holding a cornmeal cookie. A simple cornmeal cookie, partially bitten. Time seemed to freeze. Liam, the man who made executives tremble in boardrooms, found himself momentarily without a reaction. The girl, on the contrary, showed no sign of intimidation. "Do you want a piece of my cookie?" Mia asked, with the simplicity and confidence that only a child could have. Her voice was clear, without the slightest hint of hesitation. "Mom said it's polite to share." On the other side of the hallway, Carla appeared with a bucket, her eyes wide with panic when she saw the scene. The cookie, her daughter, the millionaire, her job evaporating before her eyes. "Mia!" she exclaimed in a sharp whisper. "Come here right now. I'm so sorry, Mr. Evans, But Liam was not looking at her. His eyes remained fixed on the small figure in front of him, on the yellow gloves, absurdly large for those tiny hands, on the broken cookie offered as if it were a precious treasure. Something strange happened then. A split second of hesitation, a small crack in the perfectly constructed armor. Liam Evans, the iceberg, the man who did not bend in front of anyone, slowly lowered himself until he was at the girl's eye level. "Thank you," he said to her. His normally firm voice sounded strangely soft, and to the complete shock of Carla, who watched the scene holding her breath, he accepted the piece of cookie from those small gloved hands. Mia smiled with satisfaction as if she had just closed the most important deal in the world. And maybe she had. "It's too good," she explained seriously. "It's my favorite. Mom always puts it in my lunchbox." Liam listened as if he were receiving crucial information for a multi-million-dollar negotiation. "It's been a long time since I've had one of those," he replied. And there was something in his voice, an almost imperceptible note of nostalgia, that made Carla frown in confusion. "Mia, come on!" Carla called again, still fearing the consequences of that unexpected interaction. "Mr. Evans is busy." But Liam raised his hand slightly, a subtle gesture that, in some way, froze Carla in place. "It's okay," he said, still looking at Mia. I'm not that busy. It was the words, or maybe the way they were said, that sent a shiver down Carla's spine. In 2 days of working in that apartment, it was the first time she had heard more than 2 words in a row from her boss's mouth. And now, he was crouched in the hallway, talking to her daughter, accepting a bitten cookie from her hands covered in yellow cleaning gloves. The world seemed to have turned upside down. Mia, completely oblivious to the extraordinary nature of that moment, continued. "You live alone in this big house?" she asked, looking around with childlike admiration. "Aren't you afraid of ghosts?" A strange sound escaped Liam's throat. It took a moment for Carla to realize that it was something close to a laugh, a contained, brief but undeniably a laugh. "No," he replied. "I think the ghosts are afraid of me." Mia considered the answer seriously, her eyebrows furrowed in concentration. "You don't look scary," she concluded finally with the brutal honesty of children. It was at that moment that Heidi appeared in the hallway, freezing when she saw the scene. Her jaw literally dropped, and for an instant, no one said anything. The feared businessman, the man everyone avoided, was crouched in the hallway talking to a 4-year-old girl. "Mr. Evans," Heidi finally managed to say. "Your lunch?" Liam stood up, resuming his usual posture. But something was different. A slight relaxation in his shoulders, perhaps. An almost imperceptible softening around his eyes. "Thanks for the cookie, Mia," he said. And then, turning to Carla, he added, "Your daughter is welcome here." With that, he continued down the hallway, leaving behind 3 people in different states of shock. Heidi looked like she had seen a ghost. Carla was breathing as if she had just run a marathon. And Mia, completely unaware of the miracle she had just performed, simply smiled and took another bite of her cookie. That was the beginning of something that no one could have foreseen. Something that began with a simple cornmeal cookie and oversized yellow gloves. The iceberg thaws. In the days that followed, a strange dance was established in the penthouse apartment. Carla continued to perform her tasks with the same efficiency, but now there was a subtle difference in the atmosphere. Liam no longer completely enclosed himself in his office. Occasionally, he would emerge as if by chance, at the same times that Mia was accustomed to eating. The girl, free of the shyness she never really had, now greeted him with enthusiasm whenever she saw him. "Good morning, rich uncle," she chirped. The nickname she invented on the 3rd day, and that, to everyone's amazement, he did not correct. Heidi observed these interactions with a mixture of fascination and disbelief. In 6 years of working for Liam Evans, she had never heard him show interest in any human being beyond what was strictly professional. Now, he would stop to listen to the disconnected stories of a 4-year-old girl, responding with a patience no one had ever witnessed in corporate meetings. "Do you think he's sick?" Heidi once asked the driver, Paul, as they watched from the kitchen window as Liam showed Mia how the garden sprinklers worked. The driver shrugged. Maybe he's tired of being a block of ice. Carla, in turn, lived in a constant state of alert. Despite her boss's apparent transformation, she could not completely relax. Years of struggle had taught her that good things rarely lasted. At any moment, the spell could break, and she would find herself looking for a job again. One Friday, as she finished her work earlier than usual, Carla was putting away her cleaning supplies when Liam appeared in the service area, a territory he rarely visited. "Carla," he said, his voice still carrying that formal tone that never completely abandoned him. "I would like to speak with you for a moment." She felt her stomach drop. This was it. Finally, he had grown tired of Mia's presence. Maybe the girl had broken something valuable without her noticing, or talked too much, or... "Mia told me that tomorrow is your birthday," he continued, interrupting her spiral of anxiety. Carla blinked, confused. "Yes, sir. She's excited about these things. She also mentioned that you normally go to the park, but that it's raining a lot this weekend." Liam spoke as if he were discussing the terms of a contract, but there was something different in his eyes. I have a chalet in Campos do Jordão. It's empty. I thought that maybe... He paused, as if the next words were difficult to find. Maybe you would like to use it for the weekend, as a bonus for your good work. Carla felt the blood rush to her face. A chalet in Campos do Jordão. She had never left Sao Paulo since she arrived from the small town of Itapeva in the countryside 6 years ago, pregnant and alone. I couldn't accept that, Mr. Evans. It's too generous. It's not generosity, he replied quickly, almost defensively. The chalet is empty most of the time. It's a waste. And Mia, he hesitated again. Mia mentioned that she's never seen snow. Snow? Carla couldn't help but let out a small smile. Mia had seen on television that it sometimes snows in Campos do Jordão and had become obsessed with the idea. I already explained that it's very rare and that it probably wouldn't happen. Probably not, Liam agreed. But the mountain, the cold, the fireplaces, it's different from the city. There was something so uncommon about that conversation that Carla was stuck, not knowing how to react. This man, who barely spoke to his own executives, was offering his mountain chalet because a 4-year-old girl mentioned that she had never seen snow. Paul could take you, he added, interpreting her silence as hesitation. And there's a local housekeeper who prepares the chalet when needed. You would have privacy, of course. Carla looked at her own hands, rough from so much work. A weekend in Campos do Jordão. Mia would be ecstatic. It's very kind of you, Mr. Evans, if it's not really an inconvenience, she finally replied, still not sure if that was really appropriate. It's not. The answer came quickly, definitively. Paul will be here at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Heidi will prepare a basket with some things for the trip. And just like that, without further discussion, the matter was closed. Liam nodded briefly and withdrew, leaving Carla standing in the service area, wondering if she had imagined the whole conversation. That night, in her small apartment, Carla could barely keep up with Mia's excitement as she packed a small box with her warmest clothes. Are we going to see snow, Mom? Are we going to make a snowman like in Frozen? Is Rich Uncle coming too? The last question caught Carla by surprise. No, my love. Mr. Evans is just offering his house for us. He's a very busy person. Mia made that thoughtful expression that always made her look much older than her 4 years. He looks sad when he thinks no one is looking, she said, carefully folding her favorite scarf, a Christmas gift from the downstairs neighbor. Carla stopped what she was doing and looked at her daughter. Why do you say that, Mia? The girl shrugged with the naturalness of children when discussing profound matters. His eyes are like this, see? She made an exaggeratedly melancholic expression that, in other circumstances, would have made Carla laugh. Like Mrs. Martinez's puppy when he was left alone on the porch in the rain. Carla sat on the edge of the bed, pulling Mia close. You're a very observant girl, you know. But big people sometimes look serious because of work. It doesn't mean they're sad. He smiled when I talked to him, Mia insisted. Just a little bit. But he smiled. That night, as Mia slept, hugging her one-eyed teddy bear, Carla found herself thinking about the strange turn her life had taken. 3 weeks ago, she was desperate for a job that would allow her to bring Mia with her. Now she was about to spend a weekend in the mountain chalet of Liam Evans, one of the richest and most inaccessible men in Sao Paulo. And all because of a cornmeal cookie and yellow gloves. The next morning arrived with a fine and persistent drizzle, typical of a Sao Paulo winter. At 7:55 a.m., Carla and Mia were already at the building's concierge desk, a small rolling suitcase between them. Mia wore her thickest coat, bought at a charity bazaar and slightly too big, and the same yellow rubber gloves, which she now refused to take off. They're my lucky gloves, she explained, when Carla tried to convince her to wear wool gloves instead. It was with them that I made friends with Rich Uncle. Punctually at 8 o'clock, a black Range Rover stopped in front of the building. Liam's driver, a middle-aged man named Paul, got out of the car with an umbrella. "Good morning, Ms. Moreno, Mia," he said with a warm smile. "Ready for the adventure?" Mia jumped for joy, her yellow gloves vividly contrasting with the gray day. "We're going to see the snow!" Paul exchanged an amused look with Carla as he put the suitcase in the trunk. "Well, I can't promise snow, but the chalet has a fireplace, hot chocolate, and the most beautiful view of the mountains." What Paul did not mention, and what left Carla momentarily speechless when they arrived, was the true nature of the chalet. The property was a mansion of wood and stone, with enormous glass windows that framed the mountainous landscape like works of art. An immaculately maintained garden surrounded the building with small stone paths winding between flowering shrubs and centuries-old trees. "Is this a chalet?" Carla whispered to Paul as Mia ran ahead, amazed. Paul smiled. "For Mr. Evans's standards, yes. You should see his house in Angra." A woman of approximately 60 years old received them at the door. Mrs. Jones, the local housekeeper. Her kind face and direct manner immediately made Carla feel less out of place. "Welcome. Breakfast is served on the back porch. Mr. Evans gave specific instructions for you to feel completely at home." The back porch turned out to be a covered wooden extension, with a view of a small valley where the morning mist still hung among the trees. A table was set with a variety of breads, fruits, cakes, and coffee that would make a 5-star hotel ashamed. "Is all this for us?" Carla asked, incredulously. "Of course," Mrs. Jones replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "And little Mia has a special surprise." In the center of the table was a covered plate. When Mia uncovered it, her eyes widened with joy. Cornmeal cookies decorated with colorful icing forming small, smiling faces. "Look, Mom, they're just like the ones I gave Rich Uncle." Carla took one of the cookies, feeling an inexplicable emotion rise in her throat. Liam Evans, the man who made executives tremble in meetings, had remembered the type of cookie a 4-year-old girl offered him. That's when she noticed an envelope leaning against the breadbasket. It only had her name written on the front, in elegant and firm calligraphy. With slightly trembling fingers, Carla opened the envelope while Mia was distracted with the cookies. Inside was a simple and sophisticated card, with just a few lines written by hand. "Carla, happy birthday. Thank you for sharing a little of your daughter's light with me. Enjoy the weekend. Ellie." She reread the card 3 times, trying to understand what was happening. A month ago, Liam Evans was just an intimidating name, an inaccessible billionaire she was afraid to even look at directly. Now, he was giving her a weekend at his mountain property and thanking her for Mia's presence. On the other side of the table, her daughter was biting into a decorated cookie, leaving crumbs all over the place. Her yellow rubber gloves creating an image as incongruous as it was adorable against the elegance of the table. Carla put the card back in the envelope, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and confusion. There was something more going on there, something she couldn't quite identify. A story behind the sad eyes that Mia had noticed. A reason for such a closed-off man to open up to a girl with cleaning gloves and cornmeal cookies. But at that moment, with the aroma of fresh coffee and homemade bread filling the air, with her daughter happy and an entire day of new experiences ahead, Carla decided that Liam Evans's mysteries could wait. Today was her birthday, and for the first time in many years, she allowed herself to simply enjoy the moment. The unspoken connection. The return to Sao Paulo on Sunday night brought with it a strange mix of emotions for Carla. The weekend in Campos do Jordão had been like a dream. Walks through the city, visits to chocolate shops, long strolls along the stone paths that wound through the property's gardens. Mia was radiant, her cheeks rosy from the cold mountain air, her eyes bright with every new discovery. It hadn't snowed, of course, but on one particularly cold morning, Mrs. Jones had surprised her with an artificial snow machine set up in the garden, another gift from Rich Uncle, as Mia insisted on calling him. For almost 2 hours, Mia played in the manufactured snow, building a small snowman and making snow angels with her yellow gloves, which she now rarely took off. The trip back was silent, with Mia asleep in the back seat, hugging a teddy bear she had found on her bed. Another unmentioned gift, but clearly left by Liam. Paul, the driver, respected Carla's silence, limiting himself to occasional comments about the traffic or the weather. When they arrived at the simple building where Carla lived, it was past 9 p.m. Paul insisted on carrying the suitcase and the bag with the gifts that Mrs. Jones had insisted they take: homemade jams, cookies, and even a woolen scarf that was extra in the house. "Thank you for everything, Paul," Carla said, as she put the things inside the small apartment. Mia, still half asleep, had been put directly to bed. "It was a wonderful weekend," Paul smiled, the kind of smile that suggested he knew more than he was saying. "The pleasure was Mr. Evans's, believe me. I've never seen him so interested in something that wasn't work." Before Carla could ask what he meant by that, Paul said goodbye with a wave and left, leaving her alone with her confusing thoughts and an apartment that, after the luxury of the chalet, seemed even smaller than it really was. The next morning, after dropping Mia off at the daycare where they had finally gotten a spot, Carla went to Liam's apartment with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. How should she act? Thank him formally? Pretend that nothing extraordinary had happened? Her anxiety increased when Heidi informed her that Mr. Evans was home, something uncommon for a Monday morning. "He asked to see you as soon as you arrived," the housekeeper said, her tone revealing nothing about what it could mean. Carla followed Heidi to Liam's office, her heart beating erratically. There was something in the atmosphere, an almost palpable tension, that made her feel as if she were walking into some kind of judgment. Liam was standing by the window when she entered, observing the city below. He turned at the sound of the door, and Carla was immediately struck by how different he seemed, not in his physical appearance. He still wore one of his impeccable dark suits. He still had that upright posture that commanded immediate respect. The difference was in his eyes. There was something there that she couldn't define. "Carla." He greeted her with a slight nod. "I hope you enjoyed Campos do Jordão." "It was wonderful, Mr. Evans," she replied, the words coming out rushed. Mia was delighted with everything. The artificial snow was... well, she hasn't stopped talking about it. And the teddy bear and the cookies and... Carla realized she was rambling and stopped herself. "I'm sorry. What I mean to say is, thank you very much for everything." Liam nodded briefly, as if dismissing her thanks. "It was nothing," he said. And then, after a pause, "How was your birthday?" The question caught her off guard. It was so common, so normal, like something a friend would ask. Not the kind of thing that Liam Evans, the man who commanded one of the country's largest technology companies, would ask his cleaner. "It was the best in many years," Carla admitted honestly. "Thank you for the card." A silence settled between them. Not exactly uncomfortable, but filled with something unspoken. Liam seemed to be carefully considering his next words, something uncommon for a man known for his direct and economical communication. "Carla," he finally said, his voice taking on a more formal tone. "I would like to make you a proposal." Carla's stomach leaped. A proposal? What kind of proposal would a man like him make to someone like her? Her mind immediately raced to uncomfortable scenarios, things she had heard about rich men and their female employees. But that didn't fit with the Liam she was beginning to know. A man who had been charmed by her daughter's innocence, who had remembered a 4-year-old girl's favorite type of cookie. "I've been watching Mia," he continued, seemingly oblivious to her apprehension. "She's an extraordinary child. Intelligent, curious, the kind of child who deserves opportunities." Carla felt her body relax a little, but now she was confused. What was he getting at? "Yes, she is," she agreed, a slight smile appearing at the thought of her daughter. "Sometimes I think she's too smart for her own good." Something that could be interpreted as a brief smile touched Liam's lips. "I noticed that the daycare she's in doesn't offer much in terms of educational stimulation," he continued. I would like to offer an alternative." Carla frowned, not fully understanding. "An alternative? There's a school not far from here. The Arvoredo Institute is one of the best early childhood schools in the city. They have a very advanced cognitive development program. Art, music." He paused, as if evaluating her reaction. "I would like to offer Mia a scholarship to study there." Carla felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. A scholarship? At the Arvoredo Institute? She knew the place. Or rather, she knew its reputation. It was where the children of the Sao Paulo elite studied. The kind of school with a waiting list of years and monthly fees that cost more than her monthly salary. "Mr. Evans, I don't know what to say." She hesitated, suddenly feeling small. "It's an extremely generous offer, but it's not charity," Liam interrupted, almost guessing her thoughts. "Consider it an investment. Mia has potential. It would be a waste not to develop it due to financial limitations." There was an intensity in the way he spoke that made Carla wonder if there was something more behind that offer. Something personal that she couldn't fully comprehend. "Why?" The question escaped before she could contain it. "Why would you do this for us? You barely know us." Liam looked away for a moment, and for the first time since she had met him, Carla had the impression that he was genuinely uncomfortable. "Let's just say, I recognize potential when I see it," he replied finally. "And maybe," he paused as if weighing his next words, "maybe I'm trying to settle some scores with the universe." Before Carla could ask what he meant by that, Liam returned to his usual pragmatic tone. "I've already spoken with the principal. They would have a spot for the next semester, which starts in August. There's plenty of time to get everything ready. Transportation would not be a problem. It could be included in the arrangement." Carla's head was spinning. It was all so sudden, so unexpected. Part of her wanted to accept immediately. What mother would not want the best for her daughter? But the other part felt uncomfortable, as if she were incurring a debt that she could never repay. "I need to think about it," she finally said, "and talk to Mia. She would have to leave her friends at the daycare and adapt to a completely new environment." Liam seemed to respect her caution. "Of course, take all the time you need." He walked to his desk and picked up an envelope. "Here is some information about the school, the educational program. Maybe it will help you decide." Carla accepted the envelope, feeling the weight of the fine paper between her fingers. It was as if she were holding her daughter's future in her hands. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was little more than a whisper. "For considering Mia. For all of this." Liam only nodded briefly, but there was something in his eyes. A contained emotion, perhaps, that made Carla wonder again what was really motivating that man. As she left the office, Carla noticed that her hands were trembling slightly. The envelope weighed in her purse like a promise and an enigma. As she resumed her household chores, her mind kept returning to the expression on Liam's face when he talked about settling scores with the universe. What had happened in that man's life to turn him into the distant and cold being everyone feared? And what had Mia, with her yellow gloves and her cornmeal cookie, awakened in him? As the day went on, Carla remained divided. The opportunity was extraordinary, the kind of opportunity she never imagined Mia could have. But there was something more going on there, an untold story that she was just beginning to glimpse. During lunch, sitting alone in the employee's kitchen while Heidi was organizing something in the living room, Carla opened the envelope. Inside were colorful brochures showing smiling children in spacious and well-equipped classrooms, immaculate gardens, and detailed descriptions of the educational programs. At the bottom of the envelope, she found another paper, a formal letter confirming Mia's acceptance into the school's scholarship program, with the signatures of the principal and Liam. He had already settled everything, confident that she would accept. His certainty should have irritated her, but for some reason it didn't. Perhaps because, deep down, she already knew what her decision would be. What mother would refuse such an opportunity for her daughter? But as she put the documents back in her purse, Carla couldn't help but wonder what exactly she was getting herself into. And what if that sudden generosity had a price that she couldn't yet see? That afternoon, picking up Mia from daycare, she watched her daughter playing with the other children. She still wore the yellow gloves, now quite worn, inventing some kind of game that made the other girls laugh. Her heart ached at the thought of taking her out of there, away from the friends she knew. But then she thought of the opportunities, of the future she could build. "Mom!" Mia ran to her when she saw her, her eyes bright. "Guess what the teacher said today? That I'm very smart, and that when I grow up I can be a scientist." Carla knelt down, hugging her daughter tightly, smelling the scent of child and crayon in her hair. "Really? And you want to be a scientist?" Mia made that serious expression that always made her seem like a little adult. "Today I do. Yesterday I wanted to be an astronaut, and the day before yesterday a snow princess." Carla laughed, a laugh that contained so much love it almost hurt. "You can be whatever you want, my love," she said, and in that moment, she made her decision. You can be absolutely anything you want. The truth about the past July arrived with a cold snap that punished Sao Paulo. On the mornings when Carla arrived at Liam's apartment, the frosted glass of the windows created a diffuse barrier between the luxury of the penthouse and the city that was waking up outside. In the weeks that followed the scholarship proposal, a strangely comfortable routine had been established. Mia now came 3 times a week with Carla. Liam had adapted his own schedule to be home on those days. A fact that Heidi commented was completely unprecedented. Although he never openly admitted it, it was clear that he looked forward to the little girl's visits. On one of those particularly cold mornings, Carla was cleaning the bedrooms when she heard something that made her stop in the hallway, the sound of laughter. Following the sound, she found the door to Liam's office ajar. Through the opening, she saw a scene she never imagined possible. Liam Evans, the feared businessman, was sitting on the floor of his immaculate office. In front of him, Mia, still in her inseparable yellow gloves, now quite worn, was assembling an elaborate puzzle. "No, rich uncle, this piece is for the sky, not the mountain," she explained with the seriousness of an experienced teacher. Liam, with a patience that completely contradicted his reputation, just nodded and returned the piece. "You're right. I'm not very good at this." "It's because you don't practice," Mia replied pragmatically. "My teacher says everything gets better with practice." "Your teacher seems wise." "She is," Mia agreed. Then, as if remembering something important, she added, "Mom told me I'm going to change schools to one with a tree name." Carla held her breath. She had decided to accept Liam's offer, but had not yet told Mia all the details. She had only mentioned the possibility of a new school. "Arvoredo Institute," Liam corrected gently. "And what do you think about that?" Mia frowned, considering the question with the seriousness that only children can dedicate to big issues. "Will I be able to bring my gloves?" Liam seemed to suppress a smile. "I think so. For recess, maybe. And do they have puzzles like this? I'm sure they have much better ones. And books and computers and many other things for you to learn." Mia was silent for a moment, absorbing the information. Then she asked with a perceptiveness that often caught adults off guard. "Did you study there when you were little?" An almost imperceptible shadow crossed Liam's face. "No," he replied. "When I was little, I studied at a different school, very far from here. Did you have friends?" The question, so simple and direct, seemed to contain something profound. Liam was silent for a moment before answering. "Not many. I'm going to be your friend at the new school," Mia declared with conviction. "Even if you're not there." It was at that moment that Carla decided to move away, feeling that she was witnessing something too intimate. But Mia's words and the expression on Liam's face stayed with her all day. There was something in that interaction that seemed like a key, not only to Liam's transformation in recent weeks, but to the deeper mystery of who he really was behind the cold facade. On Thursday of that week, Liam asked to speak with Carla again. This time, it was not in his office, but on the balcony, while Mia was entertained in the kitchen, helping Heidi make cookies. "I spoke with the principal of the institute," he said, looking out at the city below. "Everything is ready for Mia to start in August." Carla nodded, feeling a mix of gratitude and apprehension. "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Evans." "Liam," he corrected, still without looking at her. "I think, after all, you could call me Liam." There was something almost vulnerable in the way he said it, as if he were offering more than just the informality of his first name. "Liam," Carla repeated, testing the sound. It seemed strange and too intimate. "Mia is very excited. She has already told everyone at daycare that she's going to a school of trees." A brief smile touched his lips. "She's extraordinary." "Yes, she is." Carla hesitated, gathering the courage for the question that had tormented her for weeks. "Can I ask you something personal?" Liam finally turned to face her, his eyes revealing a caution that was almost physical. "Why are you doing all this for us?" Carla continued, her voice soft but firm. "The truth, not just that you see potential in Mia or that you're settling scores with the universe." The silence that followed was so dense that Carla could almost feel its weight. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer, that he would revert to his cold and distant persona. But then, something gave way in his expression. "I had a daughter," he said, so quietly that Carla had to lean in to hear. "Or I would have. She didn't make it." The revelation hit Carla like a physical blow. Of all the possibilities she had imagined, this was not among them. "I'm so sorry," she murmured, knowing how inadequate those words were. Liam made a vague gesture with his hand, as if pushing away her sympathy. "It was a long time ago. 7 years. A car accident. My wife was in her 8th month of pregnancy." Carla felt a knot form in her throat. 7 years. Approximately when Mia was born. Suddenly, many things began to make sense. Liam's interest in Mia, the scholarship, even the weekend in Campus do Jordão. "Her name was going to be Ana Sofia," he continued, his voice now distant, as if he were talking about another time, another life. "Isabel, my wife, loved the name. She said it meant wisdom." "It's a beautiful name," Carla said, fighting back the tears that threatened to form. They were not hers to shed. "When I saw your daughter in that hallway with those absurd yellow gloves and the cookie," he paused, seeming to search for the words. "It was as if something that had been frozen inside me began to melt. And then, when I discovered her name, Sophia," Carla completed, finally understanding. "I know it must seem strange, maybe even disturbing," he continued, now looking directly at her. "I'm not trying to replace her. It's not that. It's more like the universe gave me a second chance, not to be a father, but maybe to make some difference." Carla didn't know what to say. The story was heartbreaking and explained so much about the man in front of her, the coldness, the isolation, the sudden connection with Mia. "It's not strange," she said finally. "It's human." Something in those simple words seemed to touch Liam deeply. For a brief moment, his mask of control faltered, and Carla glimpsed the pain he carried, a pain he had probably never shared with anyone until then. "After the accident, I buried myself in work," he explained. "I built this company, this empire. I convinced myself that was what mattered. Until a little girl with yellow gloves offered me a cookie," Carla completed, a small smile forming on her lips despite the seriousness of the conversation. Liam felt an almost imperceptible hint of moisture in his eyes, a very literal reminder that there is more to life than spreadsheets and contracts. They were silent for a moment, absorbing the depth of what had been shared. Outside, the city continued its relentless rhythm, far from the moment of connection happening 47 floors below. "Rich uncle, Mom! The cookies are ready!" Mia's voice echoed through the penthouse, breaking the moment with her childlike joy. Liam blinked quickly, and when he looked at Carla again, his usual composure had returned, although something in his eyes remained different, more accessible. "It seems we are needed," he said, rehearsing a small smile. As they walked together to the kitchen, Carla felt that something fundamental had changed between them. It wasn't just that she now knew Liam's secret. It was that, in some way, they had crossed an invisible boundary, from boss and employee to something more, something she couldn't yet fully define. In the kitchen, they found Mia standing on a stool with an apron and a chef's hat, clearly improvised by Heidi, proudly presenting a tray of slightly crooked chocolate cookies. "I made them almost all by myself," she announced. "Heidi only helped with the oven because it's dangerous." "They're wonderful," Liam praised, accepting the cookie Mia offered him with the same solemnity with which he had accepted that first cornmeal cookie weeks ago. Watching the scene, Mia radiant with pride, Liam tasting the cookie as if it were a refined delicacy, Heidi watching everything with an expression that mixed confusion and something close to admiration. Carla felt a strange sense of belonging, as if in some improbable way they were becoming a kind of family. The thought scared her almost as much as it comforted her. That night, as Mia fell asleep in her small apartment, Carla couldn't stop thinking about Liam's story, about the pain he carried, about the life he could have had, about the loneliness he chose as a refuge. "Mom," Mia murmured, already half asleep. "Rich uncle seems less sad now, doesn't he?" Carla kissed her daughter's head, once again amazed by the acute perception of that little person. "Yes, my love, I think he does. It's because of the cookies," Mia declared, with the sleepy conviction of a child. "Cookies make everyone happy." Carla smiled in the dim light of the room. "I think you're right. Now, sleep." As she watched her daughter fall asleep, Carla wondered about the strange paths that life takes. How a simple gesture, a child offering a cookie, could trigger something so profound. How fate sometimes seemed to have a peculiar sense of humor, or perhaps of poetic justice. And more unsettling still, she wondered about the path ahead. Because now that she knew Liam's story, now that she had seen beyond the facade of the feared billionaire, she felt connected to him in a way she hadn't foreseen. A connection that scared and intrigued her in equal measure. In his luxurious apartment, 47 floors above the city, Liam Evans was also awake, looking at a small photo frame that was usually kept in his desk drawer. The photo showed a dark-haired woman with a radiant smile, one hand resting on her prominent, pregnant belly. "You would have liked her, my darling," he murmured to the silent image of mother and daughter. And for the first time in 7 years, the memory didn't just bring pain. The path to happiness, the morning of Mia's first day of class at the Arvoredo Institute, dawned with that typical Sao Paulo drizzle that is not enough to get you wet, but insists on dampening everything. Carla had spent the previous night preparing every detail. The new uniform, carefully ironed. The backpack packed with school supplies that still smelled new. The special lunch she had prepared for the occasion. Mia was electric, jumping around the small living room of the apartment in her navy blue and white uniform, twirling to watch the pleated skirt spin. "Mom, can I bring my gloves?" Carla smiled, already expecting the question. The yellow gloves, now worn out and with small tears in the fingers, had become a kind of good luck charm for Mia. "You can put them in your backpack, but only for recess," Carla agreed. "And remember what we talked about the rules of the new school." Mia nodded solemnly, repeating what they had discussed countless times in recent days. "Raise your hand before speaking. Respect your classmates. Pay attention to the teachers." A gentle horn sounded outside, interrupting the recitation. Carla looked out the window and saw Liam's black car parked in front of the building, Paul at the wheel. She didn't expect Liam to come personally on the first day. They had agreed that Paul would take Mia to school while Carla would go to work. The presence of the car at that time, outside of what was agreed, caught her by surprise. "Let's go, my love. The car is here." They went down the stairs. The elevator was broken, as usual. Mia skipped ahead, her new backpack bouncing on her small back. Upon leaving the building, Paul got out of the car to open the back door, and to Carla's surprise, Liam was inside. "Rich uncle," Mia exclaimed, her joy instant at seeing him. Without hesitation, she got into the car and sat next to him. "Good morning, Mia," he replied, a small but genuine smile on his face. "Ready for the big day?" "Ready. I even brought my lucky gloves," she declared, opening her backpack to show the yellow gloves, carefully folded in a side compartment. Liam looked at Carla, who was still standing on the sidewalk, looking a little lost. "Good morning, Carla. I hope you don't mind my presence. I thought that maybe, that it would be appropriate to accompany Mia on her first day." There was something almost timid in the way he said it, so at odds with the powerful businessman who commanded hundreds of employees. In recent months, Carla had witnessed many facets of Liam Evans that completely contradicted his public reputation. But even so, moments like this caught her off guard. "Of course," she replied, getting into the car and sitting on the other side of Mia. "It's very kind of you." The trip to the Arvoredo Institute was filled with Mia's animated chatter, pointing out everything she saw out the window, asking questions about what the new school would be like, and, occasionally, showing Liam some drawings she had made especially for the first day at tree school. Liam patiently answered each question, treating each drawing as a work of art that deserved serious consideration. Carla watched the interaction with a mixture of emotions she couldn't completely name. There was gratitude, of course, for what Liam was doing for Mia, for the opportunity she could never have provided alone. There was also a hint of apprehension that never completely left her, a questioning of where all this would lead. And there was something else, something new and not entirely examined, that arose whenever she saw Liam and Mia together. A warmth in her chest, a feeling that, in some improbable way, they had become a family. The Arvoredo Institute occupied a large piece of land in the upper part of Pinheiros, with elegant buildings scattered throughout well-kept gardens. At the entrance, a centuries-old tree, an ivy, which, according to school legend, had been planted by the founder on the day of the inauguration, welcomed the students with its cozy shade. When the car stopped at the entrance, Carla felt nervousness tighten her stomach. This world of elite private schools, of impeccable uniforms and parents who arrived in luxury cars, was completely foreign to her. For a moment, she questioned whether she had made the right decision, whether Mia would not feel out of place among children from families so different from her own. As if reading her thoughts, Liam spoke softly, for only her to hear. She will be fine. Children of this age don't see the differences that adults see. Carla nodded, trying to believe that. The principal, Principal Flores, an elegant middle-aged woman with a warm smile, came personally to greet them. A privilege that Carla suspected had more to do with who was sponsoring Mia's scholarship than with the school's standard procedure. "Welcome to the Arvoredo Institute, Mia," the principal said, bending down to be at the girl's height. "We are very happy to have you with us." Mia, normally so talkative, suddenly seemed a little intimidated by the grandeur of the place. Instinctively, her hand sought Carla's, squeezing it tightly. "Thank you," she replied in a low voice, which made Carla smile. It was rare to see Mia shy. "Teacher Beth is waiting for you," the principal continued. "Do you want to go to her classroom?" Mia looked at Carla for reassurance. Carla nodded encouragingly, bending down to give her daughter a kiss on the forehead. "It's going to be wonderful, my love, and I'll be here to pick you up at the end of the afternoon." "Isn't Mr. Evans coming too?" Mia asked, looking at Liam with those big, hopeful eyes. The moment caught everyone by surprise. There was a brief silence during which Carla saw something pass across Liam's face. A raw, almost vulnerable emotion. I have some meetings today," he replied finally. "But I promise that soon we'll come together to pick you up. Is that okay?" The answer seemed to satisfy Mia, who nodded and turned to follow the principal. At the last moment, however, she ran back and, to everyone's complete astonishment, including Liam himself, she threw her arms around his waist in a quick and spontaneous hug. "Thanks for the tree school, rich uncle," she said. And then she ran back to the principal, taking her hand and disappearing down the path that led to the classrooms. Carla and Liam stood side by side, watching until Mia was out of sight. There was a strange intimacy in that shared moment, as if they were truly a couple dropping their daughter off on her first day of school. "She's going to be fine," Liam said again, his voice slightly hoarse. "Yes," Carla agreed. "Thanks to you." Liam shook his head, a gesture that seemed almost uncomfortable. "Don't thank me. Mia brought something back into my life that I didn't even know I had lost." The honesty of the declaration caught Carla off guard. In recent months, Liam had opened up gradually, sharing fragments of his thoughts and feelings, but rarely so directly. "Even so," she insisted. "Thank you." They returned to the car in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Carla expected Liam to drop her off at the nearest bus stop, as they had agreed, so she could go to work. Instead, when they got into the car, he told Paul, "Let's go to the penthouse." Carla looked at him, confused. "But I need to go to work." "I know," Liam replied, his tone enigmatic. "But first, we need to talk." Carla's stomach leaped. Over the months, she had learned to better read Liam's subtle expressions, the small signs that indicated his state of mind. Now, there was something on his face, a determination, a tension, that she couldn't fully interpret. The trip back was silent, a marked contrast to the animated ride there filled with Mia's chatter. Occasionally, Carla noticed Liam looking at her, as if he were studying her profile, measuring something she didn't understand. When they arrived at the penthouse, Liam led her not to the living room or his office, but to the balcony, the place where they had had their most significant conversation, where he had shared the story of his wife and the daughter who never got to be born. The city stretched out below them, the balcony now covered in a fine drizzle that created a silver veil over the buildings. Liam was silent for a long moment, his hands resting on the parapet, his shoulders tense in a way that Carla rarely saw. "Carla," he began finally, his voice controlled, but with a slight tremor that betrayed his apparent calm. "In the last few months, a lot has changed in my life. In me." She nodded, uncertain of where the conversation was going, but feeling a strange tingling at the base of her spine. Anticipation, perhaps, or apprehension. Before you and Mia came into my life, I just existed. I worked, ate, slept, repeated the cycle. I convinced myself that was enough. He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. It wasn't. Carla remained silent, feeling that anything she said might interrupt what seemed to be a difficult confession for him. When Mia offered me that cookie, with those absurd yellow gloves, a brief smile touched his lips. It was as if something that had been frozen inside me began to melt. And then, getting to know you, seeing how you fight for her, how you love her, I realized what I had lost by closing myself off to the world. Liam turned to face her completely now, his eyes more vulnerable than she had ever seen them. What I'm trying to say, probably inadequately, is that you two have become important to me, more than I ever imagined possible. Carla's heart raced. There was something in the intensity of his gaze, in the way he seemed both determined and insecure, that made her pulse race. Liam, Please, he interrupted her gently. Let me finish before I lose my courage. Liam took a deep breath, as if gathering strength for the words that were to follow. The fine rain now beat against the balcony windows, creating a soft rhythm that seemed to accompany Carla's accelerated heart. For 7 years, I lived as if I had died along with Isabel and our daughter, he continued, his voice softer than Carla had ever heard it. I built walls around myself. I became the man everyone feared because it was easier to keep people at a distance. He took a step closer, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made Carla feel as if the rest of the world had disappeared. And then Mia appeared with her cookie and her yellow gloves. And then you, with your strength and dedication. And I realized that the walls I built were not protecting me. They were imprisoning me. Carla felt her heart hammering against her ribs. There was something so vulnerable, and at the same time so intense in the way Liam was speaking, that she could not breathe properly. What I'm trying to say, he continued, is that I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to just exist. I want to live. And in the last few months, when I'm with you and Mia, that's when I feel most alive. He gave another step in her direction, now so close that she could feel the warmth emanating from him, see the small details of his face that she had never noticed before. A small, almost imperceptible scar above his right eyebrow, the golden brown of his eyes that always seemed dark from a distance. I know it may seem rushed, or maybe even inappropriate, considering how we met. I know there are complications, social differences that people would point out. He made a dismissive gesture, as if shooing away those concerns. But the truth is, I've never cared less about what other people think. Carla's stomach did a flip. She barely dared to believe the direction the conversation was taking, fearing she would misinterpret, fearing she would hope for too much. Liam, what are you trying to say? He smiled then, a full, open smile, the kind of smile that completely transformed his austere face into something almost radiant. I'm trying to say, in a clumsy way, that I've fallen in love with you, Carla, and that I love Mia as if she were my own daughter. The words hung between them, crystalline and powerful. Carla felt as if the ground had disappeared from under her feet. For the last few months, she had fought against her own growing feelings, convincing herself that it was just gratitude that was confusing his generosity with something more. That, even if she felt something, it would be crazy to believe that a man like Liam could be interested in someone like her. I know it's a lot to process, he continued, interpreting her silence as hesitation, and I'll understand if you don't feel the same. But I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. Not after today. Seeing you two, realizing how much I want to be a part of your lives. Not just as a benefactor or a friend, but as... Me too, Carla interrupted, the words escaping before she could count them. I've fallen in love with you too. It was Liam's turn to look surprised, as if, despite his confession, He hadn't really expected his feelings to be reciprocated. But I was afraid, she continued, her courage growing with each word. Afraid that I was misinterpreting everything. Afraid that you were just being kind because of Mia, because of what she represents to you. Liam shook his head, taking another step forward, and with a hesitation that was almost palpable, he took her hands in his. At first, maybe that was it, he admitted with the honesty that Carla had learned to value in him. Mia reminded me of what I lost. She made me see what I had become. But then I got to know you, your strength, your determination, your heart, and I fell in love with the incredible woman you are. The tears that Carla had been holding back finally overflowed, running freely down her cheeks. Liam released one of her hands to gently wipe a tear with his thumb. I'm not asking that we decide everything now, he said softly. I know we need to think about Mia, about how this would affect her life. I know there's a lot to consider, but I wanted you to know how I feel. I wanted us to have the opportunity to find out. Carla didn't let him finish. Rising on her tiptoes, she pressed her lips against his in a kiss that contained all the repressed desire, all the confusion, all the joy she had been feeling in recent weeks. For an instant, Liam seemed frozen with surprise, but then his arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer, deepening the kiss with an intensity that made the world around them disappear completely. When they finally separated, both were breathless, like teenagers after a first kiss. A slow smile spread across Liam's face, illuminating his eyes in a way Carla had never seen before. I think that answers my question, he murmured, still holding her close. Carla laughed, feeling light, almost giddy. What question? If you'd like to try this, us. She nodded, unable to contain her own smile. I would. Very much. A family forged. The months that followed were a careful dance, a mutual learning. Liam and Carla decided to take things slowly, especially for Mia. They started with simple outings, dinners, walks in the park, visits to the zoo with Mia. For the girl, who already adored her rich uncle, the transition was surprisingly natural. Mom, is rich uncle going to be my dad now? She asked one night, as Carla was putting her to bed after a day at the beach in Guarujá, where Liam had a house. The question caught Carla off guard. She and Liam had discussed how to introduce the idea of their relationship to Mia, worried about how she would react. Apparently, the girl's natural perceptiveness had outpaced their precautions. How would you feel if he was? Carla asked cautiously. Mia considered the question with that peculiar seriousness she sometimes adopted. I would like it, she declared finally. He makes you smile a lot, and he helps me with my difficult problems. Carla laughed, kissing her daughter's forehead. Well, we'll see. First, we need to see if he can beat you at the memory game. Never, Mia replied with conviction. I always win. When Carla recounted the conversation to Liam that night over the phone, the silence on the other end of the line worried her for a moment. Then, she heard something she had never heard before. Liam Evans, the feared businessman, crying softly. Liam, are you okay? I am, he replied, his voice choked. It's just that I never thought I would have this again. A family. The word floated between them, loaded with meaning and promise. The following spring, when the IPE trees of the Arvoredo Institute bloomed in explosions of pink and yellow, Liam took Carla and Mia on a special picnic in the school gardens after hours. Mia, now almost 5.5, ran among the trees, still occasionally wearing her yellow gloves, now replaced by a new pair that Liam had found in a specialized gardening store. She's never going to give up those gloves, is she? Carla commented, watching her daughter with a smile. I hope not, Liam replied, gently squeezing her hand. They remind me of how it all began. But there was something in his voice, a subtle tension, that made Carla look at him more intently. He seemed nervous, something rare for a man who was normally so controlled. "Liam, is everything okay?" He nodded, then called Mia, who came running, her cheeks rosy from the effort, her yellow gloves contrasting vividly with her school uniform. "Mia," Liam said, kneeling down to be at her height. "I have a very important question to ask your mother, but first I wanted to ask you something." Mia tilted her head curiously while Carla watched, confused about what was happening. "Mia," Liam continued, his voice soft but firm, "would you give me permission to ask your mother to marry me? And if she says yes, would you accept me as your dad?" Mia's eyes widened comically, and then a huge smile lit up her face. "Yes!" she yelled, jumping with excitement. "Yes, yes, yes!" Carla felt tears fill her eyes as Liam turned to her, still kneeling, now taking a small velvet box from his suit jacket pocket. "Carla Moreno," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You brought light back into my life when I thought I would live forever in darkness. You and Mia taught me to love again, to live again. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" He opened the box, revealing a solitaire diamond ring, elegant and dazzling in its simplicity. Carla felt the world spin around her, all the memories of the last few months flashing by. The first cookie, the yellow gloves, the weekend in Campos do Jordão, the first kiss on the balcony, the night spent talking until late, the cautious plans, the growing smiles, the love that had gradually blossomed between them. "Yes," she replied, tears now streaming freely. "Yes, Liam, I accept." When he put the ring on her finger, Mia clapped happily, then ran to hug them both. The three of them were entwined there, among the flowering trees, in an embrace that seemed to contain the entire future. In the summer, they were married in an intimate ceremony in the gardens of the Campos do Jordão house, with Mia as the flower girl, proudly carrying the rings on a small cushion, her inseparable yellow gloves replaced just for the occasion by a pair of white satin gloves. During the reception, Heidi, who now smiled more than anyone had ever seen her smile, commented to Paul the driver, "Who would have thought? The iceberg melted." Paul laughed, raising his cup in a silent toast. All because of a cookie and yellow gloves. That night, as they danced under the stars, Liam whispered in Carla's ear, "Who would have thought that happiness could begin with something as simple as a cookie offered by a child?" Carla smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Mia always says that cookies make everyone happy." And 6 months later, when Mia was about to turn 6, Carla and Liam sat on the penthouse balcony to give her some special news. "Mia," Carla began, holding her daughter's hand, "remember how you always asked for a brother or sister?" Mia's eyes widened with the instant comprehension that only children have. "Am I going to have a baby?" Liam smiled, his arm around Carla's shoulders. "Yes, princess. In a few months, you're going to be a big sister." Mia's joy was explosive. Jumps, shouts, endless questions about the baby, immediate plans to share her toys and teach the baby everything she knew. Later that night, with Mia finally asleep after the day's excitement, Liam and Carla stood on the balcony, watching the city illuminated below them. His hand rested protectively on Carla's belly, where the new life they had created together was growing. "Do you think Isabel would approve?" Carla asked softly. Over the months, Liam had shared more about his late wife, and Carla felt that she knew her, in a way. Liam was silent for a moment, and then he hugged her. "Yes," he replied with conviction. "She always wanted me to be happy, and thanks to you and Mia, I finally am." As the sun set over Sao Paulo, casting golden tones over the buildings, Liam thought about how life could change in unexpected ways, how a simple gesture, a child offering a cookie, could trigger such a profound transformation. In the next room, Mia slept peacefully, her yellow gloves resting on the nightstand as always, a constant reminder of the moment that had changed everything. And in Liam's mind, that image would forever remain. A little girl with yellow gloves too big for her hands, offering a cornmeal cookie to the man everyone was afraid to approach, the man who, thanks to that simple gesture, learned to love.